Hello. It's good to talk with you once more. I hope all is well, and I commend you in your efforts to help others to find freedom. Many of my memories of growing up in the Message are good. My family traveled, and I grew up in cities from the eastern coast of the United States to the west. We attended Message churches in the cities that we lived. Including Columbia, South Carolina, Macon and Warner Robins, Georgia, Tucson, Phoenix, Arizona, Pittsburgh, Kansas, and several cities in the state of Missouri. As well as Jeffersonville, Indiana, where I now live. My grandfather was for 50 years the pastor of William Branham's Branham Tabernacle in Jeffersonville. And he was one of William Branham's close friends and a deacon in the church. As a child, I was unaware of many of the disturbing statements that William Branham made. And I was never informed of the things that happened behind closed doors. There is a saying that we have, ignorance is bliss. It means that when life is good, and without knowing the reasons to be disturbed, people can enjoy life happily. This is how I would describe my childhood. I was like any other child in the Message. I loved my parents, I loved my family, I loved my friends. I loved my prophet. I listened to his recordings daily. Not only with my family, but also when I was alone. My father had the full collection of recordings from 1947 to 1965. And I listened to them on my tape recorder at night as I went to sleep. In my school, between classes, or during lunch. And many times between. Many of my memories include the cult, or thoughts of the cult. But I also lived a normal and happy life. I was an artist, and I loved to draw my favorite cars, animals, and superheroes. I still have some of those very detailed drawings of the Batman towering over the city that he was protecting. I was a musician, a songwriter, and a composer. For several hours a day, I wrote, produced, and sang. They were Christian songs, and I enjoyed giving them to people. I have a letter from Billy Paul Branham, William Branham's son, praising me for my talents. And for many years, I had that letter framed and placed on a wall in my office. My family was under William Branham's blessing to my grandfather. All your children and your grandchildren shall be saved. My grandfather told of that blessing often, and I wore it like a badge of honor. That saying, ignorance is bliss, also has another meaning. Those enjoying blissful peace are unaware of the things that would cause distress. I wish that I knew then what I know now. I would have a million questions to ask these men. Most of my memories of those men, as it relates to the message, can best be described as spellbound. I was like any other child growing up in the message. When they spoke, and especially when they spoke about William Branham, our prophet, I listened eagerly to hear more. Like any other man, woman, or child in the cult, I wanted to know more about our prophet. I never realized that it was a cult with a human central figure. Or that our interest should be focused on hearing more about Jesus. Even hearing a story about the prophet hunting a squirrel was purely fascinating. There is one memory I have that it should have some background before I tell it. For those that did not know my grandfather, or hear his stories about the prophet. By definition, Christians are followers of Christ. And most Christians are aware that to know more about their religion, they must read their Bible. I find it very strange that a majority of Christians do not read their Bible. I find it even more strange that those who do read it never study it. Most of them read it as a collection of verses. That must be read through other verses to find their hidden meaning. And in doing so, they invent a new and different book. Instead, the Bible is a collection of scrolls and letters. Each written individually and for a specific purpose. And centuries after their composition, they were bound together as a collection of books. Most of all, I find it strange that Christians did not read the collection as intended, a library. I do, and even as a young adult, I devoted my time to reading the Bible. I also devoted my time to reading and listening to William Branham. Similar to Christians, the followers of Christ, most Branhamites, the followers of Branham, do not study what is contained in those recordings and transcripts. Most have no idea as to the many things that William Branham said. They have not studied the circumstances and the history as to why he said them. Or the many different theologies they supported. I can say that as a young adult, I tried very hard to devote myself to this study as well. But at the time, resources were not yet available to study in depth. My grandfather often told a story of being alone with William Branham. They were in a restaurant discussing the gospel of Jesus Christ. Grandpa was a Methodist preacher before the cult, and he knew the gospel as it was described in the Bible. As they were discussing, and Grandpa asked several questions that concerned him, he suddenly came to a conclusion. He said, if this is the case, then all one must do to be saved is to believe in Jesus Christ. According to my grandfather, William Branham leaned forward. He looked one way and the other. Then he pressed a finger to his lips and said, "Shh." He said, "Don't you never tell nobody that." This obviously confused Grandfather because he always told that story in mystery. And at that time, not knowing what I know now, it confused me as well. After leaving the cult, however, and no longer under its spell, I am no longer confused. I began to search the transcripts many times. There is not a single instance of William Branham describing the gospel as it is described in the Bible. Not one. William Branham comes very close a few times, but he always follows with, "and also." You must believe in Jesus Christ and also some other thing. Do some other thing. Believe some other thing. Believe him as a prophet. The gospel, translated, is simply the good news. And it is simple. The old covenant of law had failed. Mankind was under the curse described in the law for failing to obey it. And the final curse was death. Jesus Christ offered himself as the sacrifice for that curse. And all who believed him are saved. Ephesians 2, 8 through 9. Most people forget the 9th verse. Not by works, the things that you yourself do, so that no one can boast. From the years 2010 to 2012, I suffered through several horrific, life-changing events. My 2-year-old nephew developed cancer and barely survived, with such a terrible surgery that will leave him struggling for life. At the same time he was dying in the hospital, my son was being born. I spent time visiting one hospital of death, then left it to visit one hospital of life. Thankfully, he is still alive. During this time, I also lost my job, and I was forced to find small tasks to support my family. Then I learned that a competitor was threatening civil lawsuit to steal the work I had found, in the amount of $500,000. I did not even have $5. We were very much in debt, and the money that I had was owed. These are only some of the hardships that I faced. Any one of these was more than I can bear. Yet all happen at the same time. To say it simply, I was broken. None of my family or friends in the cult offered support. The church did not offer support. Not even a simple prayer. Or even a simple meeting to say, "We love you, we are here to talk." I fell deeply into depression, and my mental health quickly declined. I met with 2 pastors, one of which was my grandfather, pleading with them for support. None came. One pastor proceeded to tell me that my mental health issue was a demon and warned me not to take any medication. He said that when people take medication for mental health, 9 of 10 people leave the message. As I slowly began to recover, I began searching for answers. Answers as to why the hardships came. Answers to why the support didn't come. Answers to everything. In this process, I came to realize that the cult might not be the answer. My grandfather's response was very revealing. "People have known these things for years, John," he said. "What does it hurt you to believe it anyway?" He then proceeded to pronounce judgment on us and warned all of our friends and family never to contact us again. The majority listened to his advice. Though I was slowly beginning to heal, my mental health condition had many long-term consequences. One of these consequences was memory. Even still today, I struggle with short-term memory, and especially to remember something during distress. I'm told now that this is a symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. I had many questions that arose during my recovery, and I wanted to ask my grandfather. I still believed at that time that William Branham was a prophet, but wanted to know why there were certain inconsistencies and doctrinal issues. At the same time, I knew that when I asked my grandfather, The stress would cause my memory to suffer. As a tool for memory, I created a simple web page with a list of questions. With this, I could easily retrieve the questions from my phone. This way, when I spoke with my grandfather, I could remember them and the special details. I also saw the potential for such a tool. If I had questions, others had questions. And if the message was true, then those questions would have answers. At the time, however, I had no idea that the website would become what it is today. It started under another name, SeekYeTheTruth.com. And its intent was to seek truth, not provide historical research. The response was shocking. Before I told anyone, even before speaking with my grandfather, the cult headquarters somehow learned of my tool. They quickly spread word that I had a demon. And that word quickly went around the world. Worse, my uncle, a respected elder in a church in Georgia, spread a false rumor that I was homosexual. He was aware that most cult men and women are homophobic and would not listen to such a man. It was this very response that made me dig deeper. I knew something was wrong. If the answers to my questions could not be provided, and character assassination was the response instead of truth, then these men were hiding something. I did not yet know what, but I was determined to find out. Change is difficult. I won't make it sound easier than it was. There are many today who have recently left the cult. And they are only now going through the difficult and emotionally challenging time that my family went through. Each day was a battle. Each day was a blessing. We made our journey to freedom one day at a time. Some days were good. Some days we thought we would not survive. But where our cult friends and family offered no support, we found that our new friends and our new family have. We still have hardships, like any humans will. But we no longer look to a false religion for a miracle. To the normal human condition. And no longer feel defeat when that miracle never comes. Future projects. I don't want to reveal all of my secrets. But I will tell you that I'm about halfway finished through writing my next book. And that it will be filled with many new surprises. Thank you. It was very good to be here.